Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are grabbing a machete and hacking our way through the jungle of professional qualifications.
You really are.
Because that old currency, that degree hanging framed on the wall, it's just not buying what it used to.
Not at all.
We're diving deep into the changing landscape of professional credentials and the explosive rise of what people are calling skills marketplaces. And our core mission for you, the listener, is to really get a handle on this fundamental economic shift.
Oh.
Why is the market value of a college degree, of a standard certification, being so dramatically devalued?
And more importantly, how are organizations scrambling to find a new currency? Something based on, what you can actually do.
Verified capabilities.
Exactly. And that devaluation you mentioned is the critical starting point. We're seeing a real crisis in confidence where traditional credentials are losing what we call predictive validity.
Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
It just means a BA or a decade-old certificate is no longer a reliable signal on its own of whether someone can actually do the job today. The market is just screaming for a better signal.
Okay, so let's unpack that devaluation. It feels like it's deeply rooted in our hiring history. We should probably start with the idea of degree inflation.
Right. It's not new. Sociologist Randall Collins was pointing this out way back in the 1970s.
The 70s. Wow.
Yeah, he saw this steady, dramatic acceleration of educational requirements for jobs.
So think about it like this. An entry-level job, maybe an administrative assistant, that once required a high school diploma suddenly starts demanding a bachelor's degree.
Right, but the actual skills needed for the job, answering a phone, processing an invoice, they didn't fundamentally change.
But the entry barrier did. It's like we started demanding a gold bar for something that always cost a silver coin just because everyone suddenly had silver coins.
The perfect analogy. And that inflation is just made worse by what we call signal degradation. The degree signal itself has gotten weaker, noisier. Well, first, the economics are challenging. Research showed that as college enrollment just soared, the actual labor market returns, the pay bump you get, became much more variable.
So if every single applicant has the same signal, it just doesn't help employers filter anymore. It's
just noise.
Yeah.
And the second driver, and this one is accelerating like crazy, is the half-life of technical skills.
Technology.
Technology moves so quickly that a point-in-time credential, that certification you earned 5 years ago, it's becoming an increasingly poor predictor of your current ability.
So you're saying if the pace of technology means half of what I learned is obsolete in 3 years, my credential pretty quickly goes from being proof of competence to being a historical artifact.
Precisely. Employers just can't assume that competence is retained or updated just because someone holds a degree. Mm-hmm. And then there's the final piece, which is pure credentialism.
Using it as a gatekeeper.
Yes, just as a convenient, rigid way to reduce the applicant volume. Whether or not the degree genuinely relates to the job content, it's an easy filter, even if it's a deeply flawed one.
Which leaves employers with this huge, expensive dilemma. Their old screening methods are systematically excluding perfectly capable people.
People with military experience, self-taught coders, people who learned on the job.
While at the same time, they're admitting credentialed candidates whose skills might be completely outdated.
It's the definition of inefficiency. It costs companies real money. And that is exactly why the skills marketplace has emerged as the structural response.
So define that for us. What is a skills marketplace?
You can think of them as sophisticated intermediaries, digital platforms mostly, that match talent to opportunities based on granular, continuously updated skill profiles. They move beyond the static resume.
But hold on, isn't this just a fancy internal job board? I feel like large companies have been trying to do this for years with their HR platform.
It's a fair question, but it's fundamentally different because the underlying structure is defined by skill, not by job title or tenure. We're seeing two main types. You have your internal platforms, which operate inside a big company. This lets employees signal their specific skills and their availability for projects or gigs across the whole organization.
So it improves internal mobility.
Dramatically. It treats your own workforce like a flexible internal market. And then, of course, you have the external platforms.
Right, the freelancer marketplaces.
Exactly. They mediate transactions between independent workers and clients. They could be huge generalist platforms or really niche ones, focused on something like specialized cloud engineering.
So the key here isn't just listing your skills, it's verifying them. Let's talk about capability verification. If a degree certifies completion, what does verification certify?
Capability verification is the new currency. It's not just typing proficient in Python on your LinkedIn profile.
It's proof. It's the show me, don't tell me approach.
It's absolute proof, demonstrated through multiple channels. You might submit work samples, take a project-based assessment that simulates the job, or earn micro-credentials for very specific competencies.
Let's linger on that. A traditional credential certifies you completed a program at one specific point in time.
Right. Whereas capability verification offers evidence that you can perform specific tasks at a defined proficiency level. In a current context, it's live, not static.
That distinction is so powerful. How is a project-based assessment different from, say, a final exam in college?
Well, a final exam is often testing your recall of theory. A project-based assessment, on the other hand, it demands you apply that knowledge to solve a real-world problem.
Like what?
So for a software developer, it might involve debugging a piece of live code under a time limit. It proves your current functional capability, not just that you did well on a multiple-choice test about debugging.
It brings us back to classic signaling theory, doesn't it? The degree was supposed to be the costly signal to separate high-ability workers.
It was.
But like you said, as everyone got one, the signal became noisy. You could say the degree used to be that verified checkmark on social media, but now everyone has one, so it means less and less.
That is a great analogy. And capability verification is the market's attempt to cut through that noise by linking the signal directly to observable, measurable performance. It's much harder to fake.
Okay, so let's connect this back to the organization. What are the quantifiable benefits here? What inefficiencies are they fixing?
Oh, they're significant. First, there's the reduced talent pool. Systematically requiring a 4-year degree just excludes a massive number of qualified candidates.
Right. So companies are forced to pay a wage premium for overqualified workers who have the paper but maybe not the exact skills.
Exactly. And second, rigid credential requirements just increase search costs and time to fill positions, leading to these costly extended vacancies while they wait for that one perfect candidate to show up.
That inefficiency must be what's pushing organizations toward these better assessment methods, things with dramatically improved predictive power.
And the research here is it's stunning. There's a highly influential meta-analysis by Schmidt and Hunter that reviewed decades of selection research.
And what did they find?
They found that work sample tests, where you just ask a candidate to do a small version of the job, showed exceptionally high predictive validity. The coefficient was around 0.54.
0.54. Now, for our listeners, that is a very strong correlation for predicting success on the job.
It's huge. Structured interviews also performed really well, around 0.51. But here is the critical data point.
Okay.
When they compared these to educational credentials, the predictive validity of years of education, the single biggest filter used by HR departments everywhere, was just 0.10.
Wait, 0.10?
0.10.
That means relying on a degree to predict job success is statistically, it's almost useless compared to just watching someone do the work.
That difference right there explains why the credential currency has collapsed. It's why companies are ditching it. But if you're going to rely on capability, you need a shared language to talk about it.
Which brings us to a transparent skill taxonomy. You need a shared vocabulary.
You do. A system that defines competencies, sets proficiency levels, novice, expert, and critically dynamically updates as technology evolves. It's a massive undertaking.
And I guess this is where things like micro-credentials and digital badges come in.
Yes. They're not degrees. They are credentials tied to very narrow, verifiable competencies. They're stackable, so working adults can acquire skills incrementally without having to stop everything for a multi-year degree program.
This all sounds like a pure meritocracy, which is great. But we have to pivot and talk about the challenges. Let's start with equity. How does the old credential-centric system amplify inequality?
It does so powerfully because educational attainment, research consistently shows, correlates so strongly with family socioeconomic background.
So students from lower-income families face these huge structural barriers to getting a degree in the first place.
Exactly. Barriers that have absolutely nothing to do with their inherent capability. So when the credential is the gatekeeper, those disadvantages translate directly into labor market disadvantage.
So how can a capability-focused system actually fix this instead of just creating a new, maybe more high-tech gatekeeper?
Well, if designed correctly, it can offer critical pathways. One is prior learning assessment, or PLA. This is the formal evaluation of skills you acquired outside of schoolwork experience, military service, self-study.
Acknowledging that learning happens everywhere.
Yes. And second, The assessments themselves must be designed to minimize what's called construct-irrelevant variance,
Mean.
meaning they have to focus purely on job capability. If your assessment requires expensive software the person doesn't have or assumes a high level of digital literacy for a hands-on job, you are unfairly excluding people.
That makes sense. And what about those work sample tests? Do they help with the equity gap?
They do, potentially.
Yeah.
Well-designed work sample tests tend to show lower adverse impact. That's different selection rates across demographic groups compared to many cognitive ability tests. When you focus on the actual job tasks, you reduce the influence of other factors.
Okay, now let's look at the internal challenges. These internal talent marketplaces sound great for agility, but what happens when a top manager realizes her best people are constantly getting poached for projects in another division?
She's going to hoard her talent. Of course she is. Her own project pipeline will stall. Her metrics will suffer.
So she has no incentive to share.
None. Organizations have to build in incentives that reward managers for developing and sharing talent, not just for retaining it. And that requires a massive culture shift.
Absolutely. And I imagine employees have to feel safe to even look at the marketplace.
They have to feel psychologically safe, yes. Safe to explore new opportunities without signaling that they're unhappy or risking retaliation from their current boss. If they don't, the whole thing just becomes a monitoring tool.
Which brings us to the final governance challenge: skills intelligence. As organizations start tracking every skill of every worker, what's the risk?
The risk is substantial. It centers on surveillance and intensified performance pressure. These systems can easily shift from being tools for development into mechanisms for monitoring and control.
So there's a real big brother risk here.
A huge one. If the system feels like a digital microscope, employees will game it, they'll enter false data, or they'll just stop participating. Trust is essential.
So if we zoom out, what's the core takeaway for the working professional listening to this?
The takeaway is that this shift from static credentials to dynamic verified capabilities, it's a fundamental renegotiation of the psychological contract between employers and workers. Credentials signal belonging, capabilities signal active performance.
And making this work, realizing the promise of a true meritocracy requires a huge investment in good assessments, good data, and that cultural change you mentioned.
Yes, without thoughtful design, without a real commitment to equity and transparency, you're just substituting new, high-tech gatekeepers for the old paper-based ones. It's a powerful opportunity, but it's not without danger.
The power here is immense, for good and for, well, for potentially more control. So here's our final provocative thought for you. Organizations are rapidly building these systems, but they have to decide if this will be a tool for genuine talent optimization and expanded opportunity, or if it will become a new mechanism for intensified control just disguised in shiny, meritocratic language. What principles must they uphold to ensure it truly achieves the former? Something to chew on as you think about how you verify your own capabilities. Until next time.